All right. Well, dear friends in fitness, welcome to the webinar today. This is our monthly recovery webinar series, not recovery as in from exercise, although I guess it could be, but really recovery from this COVID craziness. And as you can see on the screen, we've got some great sponsors that we'll talk about in a minute. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Today is about Velvet Glove, Iron Fist. And this is the fifth installment, I believe, of a series that we're doing on recovery. And this one's entitled Velvet Glove, Iron Fist. So most of you guys already know me, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this. I will tell you real quickly, I like to kid around. I've been around since dirt was invented in 1983, and so I've been around for quite a long time in the industry. And most recently, I've been afforded the opportunity to be a Rex chair for the Rex roundtables, of which I was a member at one point, and also helped start the general manager one that I believe Mark Miller is now doing. But there's an affiliation with URSA that I'm really proud to be a part of. And speaking of URSA, you'll see this coming out next month. I was on the headlight committee for membership dues, and there's a new structure for both consultants and individual proprietors, as well as larger enterprise operations. So URSA really did a nice job with a bunch of us from around the world to get a membership that's really appropriate for everyone and affordable. In the past, I've been involved with the American College of Sports Medicine, and I love the golf, although I can't say I'm a golfer. And my kids and my money went to Carolina, one South and one North Carolina. And I'm with my bride, who was my girlfriend way back in the day at Penn State. She was a cheerleader. I played basketball way back in the day. So sponsors, Sulis AI, they're involved with chat, voice, and engage. And they were formed in 2009. And Sulis has evolved from a fitness equipment database website company to one of the most advanced chatbots and AI voice automation, including Alexa and Google Assistant. And by the way, they are certified Google provider. And they're with a lot of different companies throughout the industry right now. MXM, of course, we know from Blair McCaney, and he's been a supporter of us as they get rolling. Sneeze It, and now Daxco, along with In Touch Technologies. So some really good technology partners that Sulis has connected with. So what really is a chat? And it's really just a theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, and decision. So let me just tell you about them. And rather than talk, I'm going to let the screen do the talking. So as you can see, it looks like a text, but this is really connected to your website, providing all the answers that your members and your customers want on a regular basis, whenever they want it, wherever they are. Pretty cool technology, and it is here to stay. Sneeze It is also a sponsor of today, and Sneeze It is a marketing agency that I've worked with for quite a few years, and they specialize in digital lead generation and in conversion. And in other words, they really deliver the right prospect to the right brand at the right time with the right action. And some other agencies will bring you prospects to the front door and cross their fingers, and their job ends once they deliver them as customers and maximize their lifetime value. So they're very much a revenue generation company. They have this proprietary First Touch program that's coming on. And one of the things that I really like about this is this voice drop that's in the middle of the page. Voice drop can actually have, and this has probably already happened to all of us on the call, that 1,000 calls can be made in a very short period of time without the ring on your phone. So all of a sudden you don't hear it ring, and then you'll have a voicemail. It's one way to get through to people. Not everyone likes it, but it's just a cool way to communicate with prospects. Of course, they have text messaging and email follow-up. I want to share with you a new partner of ours called One Huddle. It really fits with Club Coach Services. And I want to just show you this 1-minute video of their owner, Sam Couchy, who's in New York City right now. Actually, he's in Newark, New Jersey. And I want to just share with you a little bit of what they do. And it's really gamification of training. And if you stay on with me for the rest of this session, at the end, there's a free demo that you're going to have access to at the end of the webinar. But just bear with me and watch this commercial to just get you a feel of what it's like to do training on a phone.
OneHuddle is the fastest way to onboard, upskill, and fire up your team. And we do it using quick burst games. As leaders, you know training can be tough. Whether it's getting a new hire up to speed or skilling up a sales rep on the latest product. Leading brands are leading brands because they have a workforce that's ready every day. This results in employees that will sell better, service better, and they'll stay with you longer. Using OneHuddle, you can convert your existing training material from trainers and learning platforms and manuals into quick burst mobile games. These games can be played anytime, anywhere, and being quick burst can be done in under 3 minutes. You can also, as a manager, turn any ordinary workshop or training to an interactive, competitive, high-speed role-playing game. Finally, the whole platform is easy to use and manage. As a manager, you can run reports, manage staff, change content. You can even create a training in minutes with our mobile game builder. From small to mid-sized brands to enterprises across the globe, companies trust OneHuddle to prepare their people. How do you train?
Pretty cool concept, and you'll see at the end the accountability demo that we've arranged for you all that's free of charge. You'll be able to do in less than 3 minutes, and it's really good stuff. So thank you, OneHuddle, for being a sponsor. And let's, come on. Oh. All right. So today what we're going to do is talk a little bit about how should we be leaning on people or should we be a shoulder to lean on? And there's going to be 5 steps I'm going to take you through today. One is check with yourself, safe zone for teammates, clarity and mutual agreement, stuff, setting up for success, regularly track and measure progress, and sharing a forecast about our recovery and a little bit of a what if scenario. So velvet glove, iron fist. Are you the kind of manager, or have you been managed this way, where you're leaned on, or you lean on people because you think you're going to get better results out of it? Or are you going to be a shoulder to lean on? And it's a tough decision to make on the style you want to make. And here's what I would tell you, is what I understand to be the most successful is the one that works for you best. And most importantly, to be consistent. You can't have an approach and be an iron fist and then go out drinking and gallivanting with your staff. So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach it. Whatever way you choose, I'd encourage it to be one and be consistent so people aren't guessing. So where this idea came from was in a previous life when I was working at Lifetime Fitness, I had an aquatic manager who approached me and said, you know, Frank, I want to just tell you, I love working for you. And I said, well, why would you say that? And she shared with me, she said, you know, I don't know what it is, but when you kick our ass and I leave your office, I feel good about it. And it kind of made me do a little bit of research. And there was a book that's now out of circulation that was called Iron Fist, Velvet Glove. And I believe it's from way back in the Far East times and a long time ago. So I haven't been able to get my hands on it, but it resonated with me in terms of a style. Is if you are going to hold people accountable, let them feel good about it. I had a conversation with recently a partner in the industry about hell or help. If you look at this picture, 1 or 2 logs changing their location, how you can go from somebody who is going to be helpful, or are you going to be in hell? And you sometimes don't know what kind of mood they're going to be in. And like a lot of times when I do presentations, I know that people like the way that I pose rhetorical questions. And these rhetorical questions are ones that you have to ask about yourself and how you manage or how you like to be managed. And so when you walk in a room, are you creating some hell for people? Or are you creating some help? So when I would say to anyone, or any one of you have heard the word, we have a lack of accountability problem. Is that really true? And is it intentional? Do you think people don't want to do their job? The reality is it's rarely intentional. And what happens is it becomes a little bit of a house of cards, because when you're talking about accountability, people think that it's their fault, but they're not really doing that on purpose. And so there's a couple things that you need to look at. And one is an underlying issue. Is there something going on in someone's life that might be affecting the way that they used to perform as compared to now? Are people crystal clear about their roles and duties? When was the last time you actually looked at a job description, or like I like to refer to them as job duties? Because you'll see why in a minute why I think everyone should have the same job description. Some of you have heard me speak before. That's to get and keep members, get and keep clients. That's the job description that should be for everyone. But the duties that we do, maybe people are unclear exactly what those are. Maybe that person doesn't have the resources they need. I heard from a friend this week about, my job is to make sure that my people have the resources to be successful. Do you and have you provided those resources? If it's just a lousy strategy and you need to take a look at that strategy. And lastly, are the goals realistic? If these 5 things are placed into a category of accountability and you really can't answer these, then this house of cards might be happening and you're not aware of it. I get a lot of this information today from the Harvard Business Review, arguably one of the most recognized resources in leadership and management. Okay, so now what, Frank? So what are we supposed to do? How do we make things better? Oh, I'm glad you guys asked. Because there's a couple things to do. And the first one starts with yourself. You got to check in with yourself. And the reason why is because when you start talking about accountability, here's the first thing that starts to happen. People are pointing fingers. Hey, it wasn't me. I know what I'm supposed to do. It's my role. I'm supposed to get members. And the front desk is supposed to help keep members, and the fitness staff on the floor, and the group fitness instructors in class, and the housekeeping staff. They're the ones that aren't keeping the place clean. So before you start wondering, how do you approach a lack of accountability, is to check in with yourself. And some famous philosopher said a long time ago, is knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. That's why you need to check in with yourself. So this is one of my favorite poems and probably my biggest pet peeve I've ever come across in the industry. And that's someone ever telling me that's not my job. Worst thing you can say, because it makes me think about this. This is a story about everybody, and 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about it because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have. So when somebody even thinks it's not my job, you probably have an accountability issue to address. The second thing is this sort of safe environment for teammates. And I know that I've been accused by my supervisors and bosses over the years, and owners that I've dealt with, not frankly, just too nice. Yeah, I am. I'm a nice guy. However, I'm consistently nice about it. And when I do hold people accountable, I do it in a way that they know what the expectation is. And I think from a safe environment standpoint, when I say that mostly because I want them to feel accountable to themselves first, and second to the team. So how do we create that environment? Well, you need to ask some questions before approaching these teammates. These are questions for yourself. We're still on 1 and 2 here on this step process for accountability. And this is you asking yourself, have I been clear on expectations? What is that answer? Have I asked, what can I do to help? You see somebody struggling, why don't you ask them, what can I do to help? How many times have you heard back when you've done that and somebody says, you know, Frank, I really appreciate that you just even asked? Have I taken the time to brainstorm and review processes? However, we're supposed to sell widgets in our industry, or however we're supposed to sell memberships or freeze a member. We brainstorm on that process, especially coming out of COVID and now that some of the restrictions are being lifted or being resumed again. And the last one is have I built a plan of action? So these are all questions for you to ask yourself in managing your team about a safe environment. So be aware, though, as you think about how you're going to approach someone, this has not changed in decades, people. And this is a classic UCLA study done a long time ago, and I have not seen this change even as of this past week, checking up on it. Everything you guys have heard me say has not come from my words. It's come from my voice and my body language, and probably some of the visuals that you've seen. So your words don't matter as much, but it's how you say something. I had I'll call it a discussion with my wife today. And I'm going to tell you right now, I did not say it very nicely. I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I'm not going to tell you what it was, though. So how about you try this? Instead of saying we need to meet, I'd like to schedule some time with you. I want to talk about a few things. Well, what is it, Frank? Some business issues. Notice how I'm starting each of these with. I have noticed, Frank, that your performance seems a little off. Is everything okay? I'd like to understand a little bit better about how you take yourself through the day on this project. How do you use some of the tools that we have provided? I'd like to understand it better. Totally different tone. And then what can I do to help? People have issues out there and you might have the answers. And sometimes it's a simple question. One of the best management tools ever invented is ask a question. They don't need, we need to talk. Why would you ever do that? You should have, you could have, you should have. That's wrong. Why did you do that? You think that's going to be an open door and safe environment for accountability? It won't be. And this is really all about I messages versus you messages. This is something I've learned a long time ago. And even in my family, I have to work harder. And I'm asking you to work harder. If you really want to perform yourself, if you really want your family to perform, and you really want your teams to perform, you got to work a little bit better at I messages. You is like this, pointing a finger. You know, Jeff, you should do better than that. You know, Bob, you should do better than that. You know, Jason, you should do better than that. You should have. You could have. You would have if I. Don't point a finger at somebody. Clarity and mutual agreement. It's a good one. This is really important. And you probably have heard about this gentleman, Stephen Covey. This is kind of a Bible. If this hasn't been read, this is actually the 8th principle, but the first 7, this is where this comes from. But Stephen Covey, thought leader that all of us should be following. And that is to first understand what the person's going through, then to be understood. It's a hallmark for accountability. I came across this book. It's called The Oz Principle, and it was a pretty good book, I would think, if you consider that it's been on the New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestsellers list. And it's talking about getting results through individual and organizational accountability. And what I really like about this is it actually goes through this parable. And I don't even have to tell you what this movie is. You know what that is. But what he does a great job of using each of the characters in this famous movie and parable about how to hold people accountable. And there's some tools in that book And I tried to pull them off the website for you guys, but I wasn't able to. They do a nice job of protecting their intellectual property, as they should. And I do think it's a worthwhile read. And continuing with the parable, they talk a little bit about two things, and that is above the line and below the line. And some of the below the line, the kind of crap that we do when we're trying to hold people accountable. And that is cover your tail, finger pointing, ignore and deny. Hey, that's not my job. You heard the poem. Confusion. Tell me what to do. Wait and see. You're one of those managers. Let me just see. I've already told them 10 times. Let's see if they know how to answer the phone the right way. And I remember back in the day when we used to talk about answering a phone, it was so simple, but people could not get, how can I help you? Well, you can always help me. But the classy organizations answer the phone, how may I help you? It's inferring that you're pleasing. It's a big difference. So they spend a lot of time about above the line. How do we increase accountability for ourselves as well as for everyone else on our teams or even in our family? And the first one is see it, own it. The third one is solve it. And the last one is do it. Well, that's nice, Frank. Well, how do you do that? Well, I'm glad you guys asked, because the first one is see it. Visualize and acknowledge the situation, the problems, the difficulties, and the barriers that can prevent growth and good results. You got to own it. It's got to be yours, meaning you, not them. Include yourself as part of the situation instead of seeking to make others responsible. Assume that responsibility as well for the results and any actions you take to help mitigate that situation. The third one is solve it. Just fix it. I'll never forget, I had a guy I worked for when I was at the Chevy Chase Athletic Club in Maryland. And the boss said to me one time, came into a meeting, and I'm giving him all the reasons why I can't, shouldn't, didn't. And he goes, right, fix it. Fix it. Well, I did have to fix it, and I did fix it, but it would have been nice to have getting some help out of that. Third one is solve it. Seek ways to solve the situation by investigating creative and workable solutions. And the last one, like Nike coined the phrase, is do it. Become the protagonist of the situation, not the antagonist. Take some action, imply some solutions, and generate results. It's not just all on them. Stop. Stop stands for setting up for success. You're going to help them get over this traverse, if you will, this chasm, this gap, because it's not easy as a leader, and even for yourself, setting yourself up for success. And here, this is really important. So we've kind of frameworked on how to approach becoming more accountable. And before the next steps is everything that you've talked about in above the line, is it doable? And you need to both answer that question. Is it doable? Is what we've decided upon doable? Because it might not be. Plate might be too full. The server who has to carry all this, can they really carry that much? Do you know how much weight that is? Can one person eat that much food? Is their plates overflowing? An important question to be asking on whether or not it's doable before we get to the next step. So if it's no, and if the plate is too full and they've got too many criteria or too many tasks or too many initiatives or too many items on their to-do list, then you go back to the drawing board. Be honest before you move forward about whether or not we have to reassign, reprioritize. And that leads to the next one. Otherwise, you got to reframe it. So if in fact you have decided that the plate's not too full, and you have in fact decided that it's doable, the reframing means you get the buy-in. This is what we've decided your role is going to be in the organization. Here's what the priorities are. Reframing is this what you heard? in our recent discussions. That's reframing. Here's what I heard. Am I on target? There I go again, using the word, am I on target? That's reframing. It's a great skill to learn. And the last one in this process of holding yourself and people more accountable is track and measure progress. You know, that little seedling was probably not even breaking the ground. But how do you track and measure progress? I'm glad you asked, because you got to regularly track and measure progress and productivity and workflow. There's no denying that. You got to have a scoreboard. And with the way that things are nowadays, I think there's a lot of focus on paperless. I'm still a little old school. I like some paper, but I also like to embrace this notion of a paper trail. But a paper trail can also be electronic trail, because you could print that out if you really wanted to, right? So you got to regularly track how often are you meeting with people and documenting those conversations. Because if you do get to a place that nobody wants to go to, and that's terminate or put them on a suspension, work with that person. You spent all that time and money and effort to get them on board. Let's make sure we're tracking their progress. And here's a couple ways to do. Revise that job description or those job duties. What scorecards are you using that matter, that the person who has that scoreboard understands? We talked about gaming, and that gaming in terms of training, and you'll see today when I send you in the chat and afterwards if you need to get help with getting on this platform on your phone and also on the desktop, by the way. What metrics and dashboards do you have? Are you measuring that? Are you regularly sitting down? If your boss is so preoccupied and you haven't forced the hand a little bit and say, hey, you know what, Frank, I'd really like to sit down with you. I'd really like to be able to go and go through some of our numbers. It's been a little while. Checklists and projects. There's so much software out there now. Trello is one. PandaDoc is another one. So there is some electronic work to be done here, but it's also a way that you can measure progress, productivity, and workflow. Quarterly checkpoints. I want to just share with you another book that I used in my most recent previous life. And it was after seeing a presentation called The Death of Performance Appraisals. And this guy, Bob Kelleher, out of Boston, talks about engaging with your workforce. And you'll never be able to look at performance again. And this is about regularly tracking and measuring progress and productivity, because you sit down quarterly. In fact, one of the quarters that you sit down is the stay interview. We all know what an exit interview is, but what about the stay interview? It's an important concept to understand. And one-on-one huddles. Some of you that are on this call that know me, that worked with me, I am a fan of them, whether it's weekly, twice a month, once a month. Take notes and reconvene in your huddles the next time you have one. You got to have one-on-one people. You have plenty of meetings. Are you having, I know you have Zoom meetings. We have all these webinars that we're on. And again, thank you for being here and spending some time. But what about the one-on-one time? People need it. And the reason about documentation is one of my favorite proverbs, and that is the strongest memory is weaker than the palest ink. And so if you have anything written down somewhere, people who say, well, I have a steel trap, maybe they do. But there's so many specifics about holding people accountable, you got to write it down or type it in, whether it be your phone or your computer. So last, I want to talk a little bit about being a fan to your teammates. You know, there's plenty of us, and I know, having lived in Pittsburgh and going to games with Jeff Eswine and seeing the Steelers, it's collegiate in Pittsburgh. The fan base is amazing. And I know Jason in Denver, you guys have an amazing following with the Broncos. But I was talking to somebody recently, and we were talking about hiring staff and holding them accountable. And when this person said something to me, and I had to put it in this presentation, they said, be a fan of your teammates. Not just your team, your whole team. Hopefully you are. You bleed that Penn State blue that I always talk about. But are you really a fan of each of that person? In fact, James Franklin just lost one of his big coaches to Tennessee. And you wouldn't believe the nice things he said publicly about him. That's being a fan of your teammates. Be a fan of your teammates, because being a fan, I promise you they'll be more accountable. So part of this presentation series is really about a recovery, because I firmly believe in an epic comeback in this industry. I know that people on this call or people who will listen to it afterwards are hurting. I'm hurting. It's not easy. But I really believe in my heart of hearts, and I know I'm an eternal optimist, but I really believe with this vaccine and other things that are happening, because it's here, we are going to have a recovery. And I love this quote by Franklin Delano Roosevelt: a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. And you could look at this picture and you got to wonder, are you looking at the waterfall there or that swale in the water? What's that guy doing with his sails up in such a storm? Do you know what I first go to? Is the sunshine, clearing, and I feel it. So as I think about you guys and the difficulty in taking this extra step to hold yourself accountable and to hold your team accountable, it's not easy. It never is. But if you really want to perform better, you want to help your team perform better, maybe even help your boss perform better, I wonder if you had a situation like this and you'd keep going.
I don't know what that dream is that you have. I don't care how disappointing it might have been as you've been working toward that dream. That dream that you're holding in your mind, that it's possible. That some of you already know that it's hard. It's not easy. It's hard changing your life. That in the process of working on your dreams, you are going to incur a lot of disappointment, a lot of failure, a lot of pain. There are moments when you're going to doubt yourself and say, God, why is this happening to me? I'm just trying to take care of my children and my mother. I'm not trying to steal or rob from anybody.
Oh man, I'll tell you. Think about having 80% less of what you have, and then to lean back and smile like this guy smiled to get ready to go run a race. 80%, 2 fingers, 1 hand gone, and 3 fingers on another one. Try doing anything without your thumbs. No, it's not easy. And I know it's not easy to recover. I had my own surgeries. I'm part of this pandemic too. What if we overcame?
You know what that dream is?
So, just a little summary today. And that is, we talked a little bit about an iron fist and velvet glove. You got to check in with yourself. Make sure you start with you. Create a safe zone for your teammates. Bring some clarity and mutual agreement before you proceed. And set up for success. I gave you some really pretty cool tools to think about. Regularly track and measure your progress. And just remember, there is a forecast. What if? So now let's go. It's as easy as tying your shoes. I want to share something with you, as I promised. There's a free trial, and this is from One Huddle.
One Huddle is the fastest way to onboard, upskill, and fire up your team. And we do it using science-backed, quick burst mobile games. As leaders, you know keeping your team up to speed can be tough. Whether it's getting a new hire onboarded or skilling up a sales rep on the latest product, leading brands are leading brands because they have a workforce that's ready every day. This results in employees that will sell better, service better, and will stay with you longer. Using One Huddle, you can convert anything. Training decks, manuals, internal comms, certifications, SOPs, all into quick burst mobile games. Remember that Zoom meeting that should have been an email? Well, it could have been a game on One Huddle. These games can be played anytime, anywhere. And being quick, they can be done in minutes. You can also, as a manager, turn any ordinary workshop, training, or video call into an interactive, competitive, high-speed role-playing game. Finally, the whole platform is easy to use and manage. You can run reports, manage and change content. You can even create a new game from scratch in minutes. Best part? We even do the work. Our team converts all your training for you. Videos, slide decks, manuals, whatever. So you can spend less time looking back and more time moving forward. From small to mid-sized brands to enterprises that are across the globe, companies trust 100 to prepare their people. Now, back to work.